And now, a message from our sponsor, CyberReason. If you're a defender fighting to protect your organization from cyber attackers, you must be successful ending attacks every single time. They only need to be successful once. CyberReason reverses the attacker's advantage. Their future-ready attack platform gives defenders the wisdom to uncover, understand, and piece together multiple threats, and the precision focus to end cyber attacks instantly. Learn more at cyberreason.com. The FBI and CISA detail SVR cyber activities. 9 US Combatant Commands see declassification as an important tool in information warfare. A convergence of OPSEC and privacy. Apple fixes a significant Gatekeeper bypass flaw. Babuk ransomware hits DC police. A new twist in credential harvesting. Ben Yelin considers the FTC's stance on racially biased algorithms. Our guest, Tony Howlett from SecureLink, tracks the evolution of threat hunting. And that was no hack, it was just a careless tweet. From the CyberWire studios at Data Tribe, I'm Dave Bittner with your CyberWire summary for Tuesday, April 27th, 2021. The US FBI and CISA, the Department of Homeland Security's Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, have released a joint description of trends in SVR cyber activities, summarizing the current state of the Russian Foreign Intelligence Service's operations against the U.S. and allied networks it targets. In 2018, like everyone else, the SVR decided the future was in the cloud, and it's been operating against targets there ever since. The service makes heavy use of false identities and cryptocurrencies in putting its campaign infrastructure in place. Quote, "These false identities are usually supported by low-reputation infrastructure, including temporary email accounts and temporary voice-over IP telephone numbers." End quote. The SVR also uses open-source or commercial tools, notably Mimikatz and Cobalt Strike, in its operations. There are perhaps confusing elements to the report, especially in its allusions to the threat actor's presumptive organization chart and its track record. Not everything mentioned in the track record, for example, flowed through into the SolarWinds supply chain compromise effort, but the specific recommendations in the document are worth thinking about. The problem with supply chain compromises is the way in which they can turn trusted resources against targeted organizations. The Bureau and CISA recommend auditing log files to identify attempts to access privileged certificates and creation of fake identity providers, deploying software to identify suspicious behavior on systems, including the execution of encoded PowerShell, deploying endpoint protection systems with the ability to monitor for behavioral indicators of compromise, using available public resources to identify credential abuse within cloud environments, and finally, configuring authentication mechanisms to confirm certain user activities on systems, including registering new devices. There's a sense, communicated in a memo to the Office of the Director of National Intelligence from 9 of the 11 U.S. combatant commanders, U.S. Central Command and U.S. Cyber Command, didn't sign, that more declassification would render important assistance to U.S. efforts to counter hostile information campaigns. These are often, though not exclusively, disinformation efforts, and the memo is thought to express concern that the U.S. is losing an information war, and that excessive secrecy and overclassification are an important reason why. Politico, which says it's seen a copy of the memo, quotes it in part as saying, "We request this help to better enable the U.S. and, by extension, its allies and partners to win without fighting, to fight now in so-called gray zones, and to supply ammunition in the ongoing war of narrative. Unfortunately, we continue to miss opportunities to clarify truth, counter distortions, puncture false narratives, and influence events in time to make a difference." End quote. The 11 U.S. Combatant Commands, which succeeded the old Unified and Specified Commands, some of the gray heads in our audience may remember, are major joint commands that have either a regional or a functional focus. The regional commands are Africa Command, Central Command, covering the Middle East, European Command, Indo-Pacific Command, Northern Command, covering North America, Southern Command, focused on South America. The functional commands are Cyber Command, Transportation Command, Special Operations Command, Space Command, and Strategic Command. The Wall Street Journal describes the way in which commercially collected and sold smartphone geolocation data are coming to be recognized as a serious OPSEC problem. It's a case in which the interests of operations security and privacy would appear to coincide. The U.S. Department of Defense has sought to crack down on the ways in which its personnel interact with the Internet, but much personal data, especially geolocation information, is so pervasively collected that such measures have had, at best, debatable success. Policymakers are looking at the problem, and it seems possible that such concerns may add impetus to congressional privacy legislation. Apple yesterday fixed a vulnerability in its Gatekeeper notarization process, the Record and others report. The flaw, TechCrunch says, had been quietly exploited in the wild since January to distribute the Schleyer Trojan. Researcher Cedric Owens, who discovered and reported the Gatekeeper bypass bug, described the technique as one in which, quote, a script is placed in the contents macOS directory instead of a macho. Since scripts aren't checked by Gatekeeper, this is a way in which malware can falsely present itself to the system as notarized, that is, checked and verified as trusted. Researcher Patrick Wardle confirmed Owens' conclusions. Apple, as we said, fixed the problem Monday. The Babuk ransomware gang has hit the Washington, D.C. Metropolitan Police, State Scoop reports, and it's threatened to release 250 gigabytes of sensitive files. The Record has screenshots of the dump site. The attack represents a bit of a departure for the Babuk gang, which hitherto hasn't shown signs of making it a practice to hit local government organizations. But, of course, that's a matter of taste, a little bit, habit, a little more, and above all, a judgment about potential return on investment. Babuk, like other criminal groups, will go where its cost-benefit analysis takes it. In this case, they were drawn to the D.C. police. Security firm Avanan has noticed an interesting twist on a familiar social engineering gambit. The crooks ask the victims why they, the crooks, paid them, that is, the victims. Are you trying to scam us, victims? Of course, they ask you to log into your PayPal account to help them track down the error, and then, of course, they'll harvest your credentials. So it's a bit different, but the grammar and usage in the come on are pretty bad. Following conventional usage is important. If the message can't get it right with a relatively convincing appearance of native-speaking proficiency, it's best ignored. And finally, hey everybody, here's a tip. Twitter is not a search engine. Somebody at US Special Operations Command apparently mistook it for one, or maybe just had a confusing number of windows open, or was in a coffee-deprived performative state, or something like that. That somebody, whoever it may have been, tweeted out a baffling Afghanistan Islamic State on Saturday. In truth, we all make mistakes, even US Special Operations Command, which Task and Purpose points out, didn't have its social media accounts hacked as it initially believed and said they had been. It was just operator headspace that induced the Twitter mishap. Quote, after review, it was determined our Twitter account was not hacked, and a social media administrator inadvertently tweeted the words while conducting a search for current topical events. We are reviewing our internal processes to refine our social media practices. No security breach took place, and we apologize for any confusion this may have caused. End quote. So, as you were, everybody. It's time to take a moment to tell you about our sponsor, Recorded Future. If you haven't already done so, take a look at Recorded Future's Cyber Daily. We look at it. The CyberWire staff subscribes and consults it daily. The web is rich with indicators and warnings, but it's nearly impossible to collect them by eyeballing the internet yourself, no matter how many analysts you might have on staff, and we're betting that however many you haven't got enough. Recorded Future does the hard work for you by automatically collecting and organizing the entire web to identify new vulnerabilities and emerging threat indicators. Sign up for the Cyber Daily email to get the top trending technical indicators crossing the web. Cyber news, targeted industries, threat actors, exploited vulnerabilities, malware, and suspicious IP addresses. Subscribe today and stay ahead of the cyber attacks. Go to recordedfuture.com/cyberwire to subscribe for free threat intelligence updates from Recorded Future. And we thank Recorded Future for sponsoring our show. The SolarWinds supply chain attack has resulted in many organizations taking a closer look at their efforts when it comes to threat hunting, with many advocating it become a standard ingredient in the security cocktail. Tony Howlett is CISO at SecureLink, and I checked in with him for his thoughts on threat hunting.
So threat hunting is a pretty new discipline. It hasn't really been even considered a discipline until recently, and someone gave it a name. Honestly, I wish I'd gotten to name it because I don't think threat hunting accurately describes it. It sounds more like you're searching for something out there in the wild, when really what threat hunting describes is searching for threats within your network and your systems, either that have happened in the past or maybe ongoing, where you have an intruder. And, in the past, again, this was done informally by the system administrators or maybe a security person combing through logs, often kind of in the name of forensics after something bad happened. But what we're trying to do with threat hunting is let's do this before something bad happens. So maybe the intruder has just gotten in and not really escalated privileges yet, not stolen anything or accessed anything sensitive. Or, in the case of one that's in the past, we can hopefully find out what they did and take actions before your name appears in the press, like it did with SolarWinds and some of those victims where they found out from either the FBI or the news. And that's never a good thing. So the idea there is to catch the threat while it's happening after your defenses have been breached, or maybe perhaps deal with the threat in the past before it becomes public or before it can really damage you.
If you had the opportunity to rename it, what name would you choose?
I should have thought of that before I put that forth.
It's okay. I didn't mean to put you on the spot.
No, it's a good thing to think about. Perhaps indications of breach hunting, which is it doesn't roll off the tongue, but that's really what we're looking for, is indications of compromise, or IOCs. Can we find certain things that sort of the breadcrumbs or the trails that the thief left behind? Oh, he left the bottle of milk on the counter, would be the obvious one. Or more accurately, there's some footprints in my carpet that don't look like my shoes, and things like this. Almost all attackers, even the best ones, might leave some trails behind, and that's what we look for when we're doing threat hunting.
Right. Where do you think we're heading with threat hunting in terms of do you think it's going to be more integrated into the standard suite of tools? What's on the horizon?
I think so. I think what we're seeing right now is an evolution away from this sort of geeky practitioner in a dark room who's pouring through the logs, almost like a beautiful mind kind of person who can put all these things together. That's really beyond all but maybe Rain Man at this point. Being able to look through these gigabytes of logs. So we're leveraging AI and ML, machine learning, to correlate things that the human mind can't see. We're working together more across organizations, the ISACs, the information sharing groups, because we're real stronger together than we are apart. And you are seeing some vendors offer, mostly right now, standalone, because it is kind of it's a slightly different operation than running a firewall and things like this. And any one device isn't going to have all the data you need. It's the idea of aggregating log sources and connecting the dots. But I think you will see, especially some of the larger vendors who have a whole suite of products, maybe a Cisco or folks like that who can bring an integrated suite. What's the value of that? It's going to be a marketing term for a while, maybe. So people might want to put that on their product brochure and charge money for it. What's the value? You still want a person involved. Even with the AI, ML, and all of those things, you've got to have someone sort of coordinating the whole process, I think.
That's Tony Howlett from SecureLink. And now, a word from our sponsor, Offensive Security. With the skills gap increasing, it's more important than ever to train your staff effectively and efficiently. Industry-leading Offensive Security provides training for your organization designed by the same minds behind Kali Linux and the OSCP. There are many options to fit your specific requirements, such as these offerings. With the OPSEC Flex program, they cater to your organization's needs with the ability to train on your own flexible schedule. Plus, they fully support enterprises and organizations of all sizes. You can also learn the industry-leading OSCP certification through dedicated one-to-one mentoring and virtual training with OPSEC Academy. This program is the most interactive opportunity, offering personalized instruction. Looking to develop your team's professional pen testing skills in highly realistic simulated networks? Try Proving Grounds Enterprise, created exclusively by Offensive Security's InfoSec experts. Visit offsec.com/CW to learn more. And we thank Offensive Security for sponsoring our show. And joining me once again is Ben Yelin. He's from the University of Maryland Center for Health and Homeland Security, but also my co-host over on the Caveat podcast. Hello, Ben.
Hello, Dave.
I was drawn, my attention was drawn to a publication that the FTC put out, and it was brought to my attention via a tweet by a gentleman named Ryan Kalo, who is a law professor. He's at rkalo on Twitter. And his tweet said, whoa, 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 all caps, an official FTC blog.
That's how you know it must be serious.
Yeah, by a staff attorney noting that the FTC Act prohibits unfair or deceptive practices that would include the sale or use of, for example, racially biased algorithms. Is this an interesting publication from the FTC, Ben? And I wanted to check in with you on what do you think this means in terms of the FTC signaling how they're going to approach people's use of AI?
I think, as you said on our Caveat podcast, this is a shot across the bow to an industry to warn them that enforcement is coming on this question. So, this is certainly not something I think we would have seen from the previous presidential administration. I think it reflects a change in policy and change in enforcement practices from the FTC. So basically what they're saying here is we have enough evidence now based on recent studies to know that many seemingly benign algorithms are leading to discriminatory outcomes where certain people are being denied access or, are suffering other benefits on the basis of their race, nationality, et cetera, because of these inherently biased algorithms. And what the FTC is saying is not only could you suffer a reputational loss or, potentially make your customer base angry, you might face enforcement actions. So you might face civil or criminal fines or some other civil or criminal sanctions. And they have the authority to issue those sanctions. They cite the FTC Act itself, which prohibits unfair or deceptive practices. And according to this blog post that they posted on their website, that includes the sale or use of racially biased algorithms. And then things like the Fair Credit Reporting Act and Equal Credit Opportunity Act, where if your algorithm leads to some sort of discriminatory outcome where people of a particular race are less likely to qualify for credit, then you are going to be eligible for sanctions from the FTC for unfair trade practices. So I think this is really a groundbreaking post that we saw from the FTC and a real warning to the industry that they are intending to take racially biased algorithms seriously. Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, you look at some of the titles of these paragraphs in this publication. It says, don't exaggerate what your algorithm can do or whether it can deliver fair or unbiased results. Tell the truth about how you use data. Do more good than harm. That would seem pretty straightforward, but they point out that you could end up with basically the equivalent of digital redlining, which was the old thing back in the 60s was when it was really a thing where, neighborhoods would kind of carve out based on race who could live there or not. They're saying that could be an unintentional consequence of the way some of these algorithms work. And if your algorithm is doing that, the FTC could come after you. Yeah, and one thing that's important to note here is it does not require discriminatory intent. One of the things they're saying here is that it's up to companies to watch out for discriminatory outcomes. So even if you have the most benign intent possible, and many companies do. They talked about research done at research presented at a conference back in 2020, showing that algorithms developed for purposes like healthcare resource allocation and advertising actually ended up being racially biased. So it is your responsibility as a company to evaluate whether your algorithm leads to discriminatory outcomes, even if you obviously had no intention of being discriminatory.
Mm-hmm. Well, it'll be interesting to see where this goes. Again, this is over on the FTC's website. It's titled Aiming for Truth, Fairness, and Equity in Your Company's Use of AI. It's written by Elisa Gilson, who is, I believe, an attorney at the FTC. Interesting stuff. Ben Yelin, thanks for joining us and helping make this clear.
Absolutely. Thank you, Dave.
Thanks to all of our sponsors for making the CyberWire possible. And that's the CyberWire. For links to all of today's stories, check out our daily briefing at thecyberwire.com. The CyberWire podcast is proudly produced in Maryland out of the startup studios of Data Tribe, where they're co-building the next generation of cybersecurity teams and technologies. Our amazing CyberWire team is Elliot Peltzman, Puru Prakash, Kelsey Bond, Tim Nodar, Joe Carrigan, Carol Terrio, Ben Yelin, Nick Valecki, Gina Johnson, Bennett Moe, Chris Russell, John Petrick, Jennifer Iben, Rick Howard, Peter Kilpie, and I'm Dave Bittner. Thanks for listening. We'll see you back here tomorrow. And now, a word from our sponsor, ExtraHop, stopping advanced threats with network detection and response. Stopping advanced threats requires knowing exactly what you're up against. With 90 days look-back, ExtraHop Reveal X is the only solution that shows you not just where the intruders are going within your network, but where they've been. ExtraHop Reveal X provides complete visibility across cloud, data center, and IoT, even when traffic is encrypted. Powered by cloud-based AI, Reveal X finds threats in real time, while powerful investigation and forensics capabilities allow you to respond 84% faster. See how it works in the full production demo, free online at extrahop.com/cyber. That's extrahop.com/cyber.